Welcome, fellow early childhood special education and professionals. Today, I will be explaining the behavioral data collection process. So, the first part of the process is using um, behavior, positive behavior support. Teachers first use the Tier 1 to establish rules, routines for all children in the classroom. Teachers can maintain a positive classroom environment by following a daily schedule and classroom expectations. The behaviors of all children in the classroom are better when children know the schedule and what the expectations are. So as I mentioned before, we talked about the tier one. So we're looking at the pyramid, and the tier one is the bottom of the pyramid. So the tier one is what we put into place for all students. So like I mentioned, for all students, we're setting a schedule and we are setting the expectations of how we are wanting them to behave and to learn. But then you have some students that are not quite getting the tier one, um, so they need a little bit more support from the tier two, which are when the students need individual support. Um, so that the teachers are going to start using observations, assessments, and they're going to determine exactly where the child needs support. Um, the parents, other professionals, um, the lead teacher all gather information and data so they can individualize for the students and to create a positive environment for everyone. The next thing we're going to look at is the benefits of three different methods of documenting and organizing observed behavior data. So the first one is, as a teacher, I would first reflect on teaching and behavior management practices before I would provide behavior management support to students. I would self-assess my classroom, set up all expectations, um, and post them throughout the classroom and verbally review them every day. I then would ask a fellow teacher to observe my teaching and get their input. I would use a PBIS classroom management assessment tool. So, like I stated before, if the tier one isn't um, working for all students, that's when you would ask your fellow um, teacher or someone to observe your teaching practices, and maybe that's the problem. Is there's something that you're doing or you're focusing on something different that um, they can pinpoint for you, and that might solve it. But then you'll have those other kids that need extra support. Some of the things that are on that assessment are the classroom organization, the way it's arranged. Um, is the rules predictable? Are they posted? Are they reviewed? Um, maybe they'll see a frequency of behaviors in some children. So it may help you also as a teacher because then you won't feel like you're not seeing it. It makes you feel like, yeah, okay, I'm seeing this too. How can I support this child? Um, Another type of assessment tool is the ABC model, which so ABC stands for something. So the A stands for an antecedent, which is the setup of this setting up the student for behaviors. So B is the behavior. And then what is the behavior? C, consequences, which makes the behavior reoccur. The student needs to be observed 7 to 10 times to determine the behavior that is reoccurring and what is happening before to cause the student to behave this way. There's also a digital tool out um, called the Leveraging Technology, which is an app you can download on your phone, and you can record the data right on your phone, and it kind of compiles it for you, so a little bit less legwork. Um, so that explains the three different methods of documenting observed behavior data. Um, so the next thing we're going to talk about is factors that influence or hinder um, the accuracy of our behavioral data collection. So subjective is one of them, which is a related factor when one might change or not remember the response. Also, if the observer doesn't understand what they need to be observing. So when I'm observing children, um, you or you're observing children, you need to be subjective. Um, if you can't remember the response or you can't hear the response, then you can't write it down because you could be hindering the results. Observer factors of interpreting the behavior are based on their knowledge. Behaviors from different people could see different things. Like I mentioned above, like having that other person come observe and see the same things you are seeing helps cement the that you need to get the child some help. Um, if an observer gets tired, sometimes their accuracy of collecting data is skewed. Another type is methodology factors when behaviors are not defined or tools being used are not designed or tested for the type of data you're trying to collect. The next thing is the importance of collaborating with families in the process of collecting data about students' home environment and family dynamics. So it is important to collaborate with families for many reasons, but especially when you're having behavior problems because you want to gain their trust and you want to start to build a relationship with them. You want to ask them like what are their routines at home? What activities or goals do they have for their child? So that you can kind of build off what they have because that's their child. They're their first teachers, so you kind of want to be on their same team with them. But you also need to remember to support the child and the other children in your classroom. So when both teachers and parents are tracking data, they can come together and find the common denominator. They can share ideas on how to help the child coming back together often, sharing what works in both home and school environments. The next thing we're going to look at is working with families to create common behavioral goals for young children in both the school and home environment. When working with families, I will let them know of the behavior and the academic expectations at school. Then I'll ask them what theirs are at home, and we will discuss ways to keep their child on track. With open communication and frequent contact with families, the behaviors we hope will start to minimize, um, and their academics will be increasing. We also are looking at behaviors of not only like grade school kids or elementary school kids, but also like the birth to preschool environments. There's a little bit of difference between these age groups. Data collected from birth to preschool is mostly for training purposes. The data shows what knowledge those teachers are lacking in their early childhood practices so that we can get them more support and train them on proper ways to deal with behaviors or teach them to use their words, how to identify their emotions. So it really it's really important in those preschool years and below to teach them those self-help skills, the regulating their behaviors and their feelings. So when they do get to grade school, that doesn't hinder them in their academics. So that's the difference is that the those like under 3 years old are more social emotional behaviors. And whereas when we get to kindergarten through third grade, we are seeing more academic concerns. But sometimes those concerns come out in behaviors because the student doesn't know how to ask for help or um, doesn't want to ask for help. So then they act out with behaviors. The next thing is collecting behavioral data about children um, with and without exemplarities. Data can be collected in many ways. We can direct observation where the students are observed in their own environment. Also, indirect observations where students' academics records are looked at. We interview with any adults, parapros, anybody, teachers, parents, or any other key adults that are in their life, get their input, um, see what they're seeing. Uh, so another one is summarizing data, which involves developing an operational definition and that summarizes the observed behavior, generating hypothesis about the behavior's function, identifying context factors and reinforcements that can be multiplied by teachers, and then selecting or developing an intervention procedure based on this information. Um, there's also the functional analysis, which is attesting the theory by interfering with the student's environment, looking at how it is affects the behavior by having many ways to observe behavior. Students of any ability can have data collected and analyzed for more support. Thank you, fellow early childhood special education professionals, for attending today. To recap, today we learned about behavior data collecting using functional behavior assessment.